Welcome to World Prism. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon for more breaking updates. In July 2025, North America's industrial core was rocked by a decision that would send ripples far beyond the continent's borders. Canadian Prime Minister Mark Carney took the world by surprise when he announced sweeping new steel tariffs and strict import quotas, targeting foreign steel, especially from the United States. This wasn't just a minor policy adjustment, it was a bold, calculated move to shield Canada's steel industry from global competition and assert a new era of economic independence. The announcement sent shockwaves through U.S. manufacturing, especially in Detroit, where auto industry leaders scrambled to assess the fallout and braced for higher costs and potential supply shortages. For decades, U.S. and Canadian factories had relied on a seamless, integrated steel trade, with parts and raw materials crossing the border daily, fueling everything from skyscrapers to cars. Carney's ambitious plan to have Canadian reliance on U.S. steel within a single year threatened to upend this delicate balance, forcing companies to rethink their entire supply chains. The move marked a new era of economic nationalism, even among close allies who had long prided themselves on open borders and mutual prosperity. Stock markets tumbled, and American industrial giants braced for impact, as investors worried about the ripple effects on global trade and the possibility of retaliatory measures. The highly integrated North American supply chain, once seen as a model of efficiency, suddenly looked vulnerable and exposed to new risks. Workers and executives on both sides of the border wondered, was this a temporary rift, or the beginning of a prolonged economic battle that could reshape industries for years to come? Thousands of jobs, and the future of key industries now hang in the balance, as uncertainty spreads from factory floors to boardrooms and beyond. The stage was set for a new, unpredictable chapter in North American trade, one that would test the resilience, ingenuity, and resolve of both nations. Carney's decision was driven by mounting pressure on Canada's steel sector, which had become a symbol of both national pride and economic vulnerability. For years, the industry was battered by cheap imports and punishing U.S. tariffs, leaving thousands of jobs hanging in the balance and entire communities anxious about their future. Canadian mills faced an existential threat as global oversupply and diverted steel from other countries flooded the market, driving down prices and squeezing local producers to the brink. Carney's response was bold and multifaceted. He announced a $1 billion fund to modernize mills, introduced new tariffs to level the playing field, and implemented a sweeping Buy Canadian mandate for all federal projects, ensuring homegrown steel would be prioritized in public infrastructure. The goal was clear: build a resilient, innovative industry less dependent on foreign, especially U.S.-owned steel, and foster new technologies to keep Canada competitive on the world stage. This was about more than economics. It was about sovereignty, national security, and protecting the livelihoods of Canadian families for generations to come. The government's long-term vision was ambitious: ensure Canadian steel powers everything from bridges and skyscrapers to naval vessels and military vehicles, reinforcing the backbone of the nation. In a world rapidly shifting toward protectionism and economic uncertainty, Carney's move sent a clear message: Canada would defend its industrial future, even if it meant risking trade friction with powerful allies. The era of unfettered free trade was over. Strategic self-reliance and national resilience had become the new order for Canada's steel industry. The seeds of this crisis were sown years earlier, as economic anxieties and political pressures began to reshape U.S. trade policy. In 2018, President Trump launched a global trade war by imposing steep tariffs on imported steel, arguing it was necessary to protect American jobs and national security. These tariffs, intended to revive U.S. industry, instead sent shockwaves through international supply chains and provoked swift retaliation, including from America's closest allies, like Canada. Tensions simmered for years, with businesses and workers on both sides of the border feeling the strain. But in 2025, Trump doubled down, raising tariffs to a staggering 50% on steel and aluminum imports. This aggressive move was seen as a direct blow to Canada, souring relations and closing the door on any hope for a quick compromise or negotiated settlement. Ottawa had already responded with its own tariffs, targeting U.S. goods, from steel to agricultural products. But the escalation forced Carney's hand. pushing Canada to consider even bolder measures. Despite Washington pumping billions into the sector, U.S. steel production began to slip as global partners sought alternatives and domestic demand faltered. The higher tariffs pleased some U.S. steelmakers, who saw short-term gains and celebrated new contracts and government support. But for manufacturers reliant on affordable steel, like automakers and construction firms, costs soared, supply chains tightened, and competitiveness dropped sharply. Economists and business leaders warned of self-inflicted economic wounds as higher prices rippled through the economy and uncertainty grew. The tit-for-tat measures left both economies exposed, with workers losing jobs, small businesses shuttering, and entire communities caught in the crossfire of escalating trade tensions. The U.S. gamble on protectionism set the stage for Canada's bold counterstrike as Ottawa weighed new strategies to defend its industries and workers. Now, both sides faced the mounting consequences of a trade war spiraling out of control, with global supply chains disrupted and economic uncertainty spreading. The North American partnership, once a model of cooperation, was now under unprecedented strain, with the future of cross-border trade hanging in the balance. Carney's announcement sent U.S. steel stocks plunging. United States Steel Corporation dropped 12% in a day. Canada, a top buyer of American steel, was suddenly slashing demand. The Rust Belt braced for job losses, with experts warning up to 20,000 U.S. steel jobs could be at risk. The shockwaves rippled through supply chains, from Minnesota's iron mines to Detroit's auto plants. For cities like Detroit, still recovering from past downturns, the threat of layoffs and plant closures loomed large. U.S. steel makers now faced lost exports and higher costs for Canadian components. The tightly woven North American supply chain was unraveling, leaving companies scrambling for alternatives. Uncertainty stifled investment and hiring, as businesses struggled to plan for an unpredictable future. The American steel industry was suddenly on the defensive. The electric vehicle boom depends on steady, affordable steel supplies. The US-Canada trade war threatens to disrupt this, raising costs and delaying production for automakers. Specialized steel for EVs could become scarce or pricier, pushing up car prices just as the industry aims for mass adoption. Higher costs risk slowing consumer demand and stalling the green transition. Automakers may rethink investments or delay new factories amid the uncertainty. The trade dispute exposes the fragility of global supply chains and how quickly progress can stall. North America's EV ambitions now face a major roadblock. The future of clean transportation hangs in the balance. In Canada, Carney's steel policy drew mixed reactions. Steel producers and unions welcomed the protection and billion-dollar modernization fund, seeing long-overdue support. The Buy Canadian pledge for government projects was hailed as a win for domestic mills. But manufacturers who rely on steel worried about rising costs and reduced competitiveness. The new tariffs targeted Chinese steel and imposed strict quotas to prevent market flooding. While the steel sector cheered, other industries braced for higher prices. Carney's government bet that a strong, sovereign steel industry was worth the short-term pain. The policy sparked debate: protect one sector or risk harming others. As the dust settles, the big question is, what's next for US-Canada trade? The Biden administration voiced disappointment, but both sides face political pressure not to back down. Tense negotiations are underway, with thousands of jobs and the future of the auto industry at stake. If tariffs persist, job losses and higher car prices seem likely. Automakers may shift supply chains or production, raising costs for consumers. The dream of a seamless North American auto industry is under threat. The risk of a prolonged trade war looms, with economic pain on both sides. Only renewed cooperation can prevent lasting damage to the continent's prosperity.